Hey, this is Paul from Paul Component Engineering, and been in business for 30 years. And today we're going to drive around Chico and look at some stuff that's been very important to me, some historical stuff for the company. It's been a crazy ride. Maybe we'll meet a couple people. So hang on, and we'll get out of here. Alright, so right behind me, this was my first and only job in Chico. This was Mountain Goat Cycles, which they gave me a job in 1988 when I moved here. $5 an hour, grinding fillet welds from Philip Racing, mostly Deluxes, which if you know your vintage mountain bikes, the Deluxe is the stuff. This is actually my Deluxe. I built this when I was working there. Everybody got to build a frame, and this is a Russ Pickett paint job. My original paint job was horrible, but I sold this bike. The kid I sold it to broke it up here, broke cantilever studs off. I have no idea how that happened, but I was able to buy it back, and I'm really glad because this is a piece of Chico history and a piece of my history, and I'm super happy to have it back. So we're just here at Sierra Nevada, and like I said, this is my first time here, and we should walk by Jeff Lindsay, my last boss from, well, that was about 30 years ago. 30 years ago. You move it over 1 decimal point. Yeah. So I'm excited to see you, say hi, that you just happened to walk by when we're filming. Any memory, anything pop out how crappy of an employee I was because I was so distracted trying to...
All you wanted to make was quick releases. You didn't care about making bikes for us. You wanted to make quick releases.
That's kind of how it was. Jeff Lindsay, inventor of proprietor of Mountain Goat Cycles, which one of the first mountain bikes ever, and was conceived in Chico and tested in Bidwell Park, where we were earlier.
Right, but no liability insurance. We were the insurance.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure. I understand you have an anniversary coming up.
Yeah, I hope you can come over.
Congratulations, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Well-deserving, making great products.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, seriously, really has added a lot to the bike industry. Good job.
Right on.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
October 19th, our open house, if you want to stop by.
I'll be there.
Okay. So we're on the street right outside where I first bought my house, my first house in Chico, and started my business. It was the cheapest house in town that had a garage. And so we're kind of creepily standing on top of the van looking into the backyard. There's a tiny little garage right there where I started the company with a mill and a lathe and some hand tools. And I'd write the orders on the back of the door when I'd get an order, which would be like once every 2 weeks. I'd just write it on the door and take it from there. Eventually, the entire house, except for my bedroom, turned into the company, and it was disgusting. But this really takes me back. That was fun. So this is my this is the Christmas bike, and this gets plugged in and hung from my porch every Christmas. And lights up, but it has one of the very first, like, second or third C-post quick releases. This is the first product I ever attempted to sell. And it's not going to be working so great, and I'm sure the C-post is welded to the frame, but I rode this bike to Mountain Goat when I first moved here, and I got a job at Mountain Goat. This was my commuter, and naturally I had to put my product on there, and it's been on ever since. This thing is 30 years old. Hey, I am here at Pullen Cyclery, the oldest bike shop in Chico, probably in the whole North State at least, with Steve O'Brien, proprietor. Steve was my very first customer, and that was 30 years ago. I'm not sure of the exact date, but
we could probably pull up the receipts.
They're in a box somewhere.
Yeah. I don't get, as you can see, I don't get rid of anything.
Very faded. Steve has an amazing collection of historic mountain bikes, and this frame right here, what is this? Tom Teasdale built this?
Tom Teasdale, one of 3 built for the Fisher Mountain Bike Company.
Amazing. So this has the original set of skewers on it, and some brakes on the front, and it just warms my heart. Steve, what did you think? Do you remember me coming in? I remember one time you bought a pair, and then the next time I tried to sell you something, you didn't.
Well, that's the nature of the bike biz. You got to figure if stuff's going to sell or not.
Absolutely.
But I like stuff that works. I like stuff that's field maintainable. I don't like proprietary stuff that you have to get your equipment from one customer. Or one supplier. I don't like that. I like stuff that's easy to work on, repairable, parts are replaceable.
We've always tried to go down that road.
Exactly. So, no, I finally had a little extra money, decided to buy some sets of skewers for my bikes, and then I called a few other dealers and said, you should buy these things.
Awesome. I so appreciate
like Bradley
that.
Wool and
So appreciate
different
that.
folks in the industry.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the, when I moved out of my house, I moved into the center bay of this building, and it was really exciting because there was a meth dealer that lived next door, and so they would get raided every couple months, and we would just put the door down and hide. Eventually took over this spot, and then the whole building for a while, and then the crash came and we shrunk down, and at one time I think we were in this end bay, and then finally the business just got too big and I had an opportunity to buy the building we're in now. But also there's the Humane Society across the street, so there's always barking dogs, but the new building has a veterinarian across the street, so we still have the barking dogs. So we're here at Sierra Nevada. This is my first time I've ever been here. It's kind of nice. And I'm supposed to talk louder, but I don't want to be a jerk. So we're here with Jim Hollinger, who has been with me more than anybody else, including girlfriends and wives too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Probably. I don't know if that's good or embarrassing.
I've known a few.
But Jim and I have been through a lot of stuff together, and so I thought we'd just bring him down here because he at this point is like such an integral part of the company. And you remember getting hired?
So we had a friend, Bradley, who I had lived with, and you knew him through the bike industry and stuff.
Bradley Wool.
And some of you out there might know who he is. But anyway, he said, oh, I've got this friend named Paul. He makes bike stuff. You might have something in common with him. So I met Paul for the first time on a patio at a bar, which is really weird. And we talked about stuff, cars, bikes, maybe other stuff too. Maybe had a beer or two. Anyway, at one point he asked me if I knew how to run a lathe or any machine tools. And so I lied, and I said I did, because I had taken one engineering course at Chico State, and I think I ran a lathe for like 5 minutes, and I maybe turned a milling handle or something. Anyway, so Paul's like, hey, cool, right on. So you should come to the shop at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, and we'll see if it works out. So I ended up going to the Chico State Library that Sunday night and like reading up on lathes and mills, and so I could fake it at least. And I did. Went to work for Paul that morning, and he put me on this old lathe I was turning, I think, stoplight
arms
for like 2 weeks, doing that, like turning hundreds of those a day. I did that for a couple weeks, and apparently he thought I did a good enough job, and so he put me later on a milling machine. I mean, he showed me everything that I know to this day as far as machining on manual machines. And
you've learned some stuff on your own.
I've learned some stuff, but to get my start, he showed me everything. And so he put me on these machines, and that was in 1992, actually September of 1992.
Oh.
So this is my 27th year with Paul, and I've taken a couple of days off here and there. I went back to school at one point, and then I
Got a engineering tech degree.
Got a degree in manufacturing, yeah.
Manufacturing.
Because that was the easiest thing to do because I'd already been doing it for Paul for 5 years. So I could go back and get my degree, and I kind of knew what I was doing. And then I went back to work for Paul in 2000 when I graduated, and I've pretty much been there ever since. But
seeing the company go through a lot of changes.
That is true.
From manual machines to the first CNCs, and the first CNC was this thing that had all these little pegs on it.
We called it Gunther.
It was Gunther.
It was an automatic screw machine, and you program it with pegs, and it had mechanical stops. It was like halfway between a CNC and a manual machine. And Paul and I knew nothing of how to program it or do anything. The cool thing about that machine, though, is it could spit out like 1,000 bad parts before you even
very quickly
before you knew what was going on.
It was awesome.
And then you dig all these parts out of the bin with all the aluminum chips, and you'd measure them, and they'd all be bad. And you'd be like, we just started the machine at 9, and it's noon, and we just made 400 bad washers. So it was fun. We learned though. We learned a lot.
And then we got a mill.
Oh yeah, we got
CNC mill. That was a CNC mill. It was a conversion, and it was really, really bad. But that was your baby, the Cookie Monster.
The Cookie Monster was our first mill that Paul bought. I remember picking that thing up and going, what the hell are we gonna do? But it was this old converted machine that looked kind of like a conventional milling machine. So, but it had motors. It didn't have any handles. So we had to figure out how to make the motors work. But I remember one of the first things we ever made on that machine were moon units. And to make the moon units, we'd cut out the one side, the shape of the moon unit, and then we had a jaw that we cut, which is pretty much the way we do it now still. A jaw, we flip over the part. It was a big long bar of maybe 20 moon units in a couple of vices with cutouts for the moon units to sit in, and we clamped those in there. And I remember we're like, okay, we got to cut the back, all the extra material off the back of the moon unit. So we're doing that. This is like, we didn't know anything. And I'm leaning up against the control. The machine's, cutting this slowly.
It doesn't have this big enclosure like.
Yeah, it's an open machine. So I'm leaning against it. Paul's standing right next to me. We're fascinated. It's like, holy crap, it's making parts, and we're not turning handles. So anyway, it gets to the end of this long bar, 20 moon units or so, and there's this little piece of scrap sitting on the end that we didn't know anything about it. But it cut that little piece of scrap off, and that scrap went and flew into my wrist right there. And there was
it was about that long and about that wide, and super pointy.
And so I'm like, holy crap, what the hell? And I'm like, Paul, pull it out. So he tries to pull it out, and
I think it burned my finger.
It was super hot, so he burned his finger. And then I'm like, get that water bottle, put some water on it. So he pours water on it, cools it off, and the thing is smoking. And finally, he was able to pull it out. There was no blood because it had completely cauterized my skin. But he pulled it out.
That was awesome.
It was really fun. I still have that piece of metal on my toolbox at home because it was, it was a scary but hilarious moment.
It was funny.
Yeah. So
another scary and not that hilarious moment was when I took a 3/8 drill and drilled through my finger. That was when we were still doing manual machines, and you put the part in the vise, you tighten the vise handle, and then you pull the lever down to drill, and by then hopefully you've got your finger out. Well, you do that a couple hundred times and you start thinking about things, and one time you leave your finger there and the drill just goes right in, and I didn't even feel it. It just felt really weird. But I just put a rag on it, walked out. Somebody said, "You don't look so good. We're going to the hospital."
That was scary.
Like, yep.
I was right there.
Going to the hospital.
And it was Pete who, I think he came up and he's like, "I got to take Paul to the hospital." I was like, "Okay, right on." And then he called later, pre-cell phone, anything else, and he told us, "Oh yeah, Paul drilled through his finger," and then we all went over to the mill to see what had happened. And we had to clean the mill up.
parts of me were on that 3/8.
There
It's
was-
about a drill about this big into this.
But it served me later in life because I ended up going back to school to get my manufacturing degree, and I used Paul's drilling through his finger as a lesson for one of the speeches that I had to give in my safety class. And I figured out, okay, this is not how you design a piece of tooling. You got to design it this way. And it actually was pretty. I think people were pretty into it because I was like, yeah, he drilled through his finger. And I brought the old piece of tooling in that we used, and but yeah, that was kind of scary.
Yeah. Hey, this is our local scrapyard in Chico here. We just dropped off 1,000 pounds, give or take, of aluminum scrap. That's all the leftover for when we're making bike parts, and we start with mostly recycled aluminum, American aluminum. We go through it. We sell the fine bike parts that are left out of the bars that we cut up, and then we have all the scrap left over. It gets recycled, and I don't know, some of this aluminum maybe has gone through the Paul components 5 or 6 times, but that's just kind of a cool thought. I have no way of knowing. Back in the 90s, I introduced a rear derailleur, and I was the king of the world, and I should have just bought a brand new truck, but instead, being the dumbass that I am, I built this truck from scratch, bought it out of a junkyard for $500. It was completely demolished. Built the whole thing, changed out the entire front clip out of the thing, put a modern independent suspension on it, repainted it, bodywork, new engine, 383, 727 transmission. Spent about 35 grand, never quite finished it, but it was sort of a dream come true to actually build a car. So the guy driving away in the forklift, that's Gene. He's been my scrap guy for a million years, and about 2000, 2001, I really needed money, and I sold it to him for, I think, $1,800. And it was a good move, because I did not need this project around anymore, but isn't she a beauty? 4-door, long bed, got that 65, I think it's a 65. They made this from 61 to 68, this particular body. Very few long bed 4-doors. So, yeah, rule. Welcome to Bidwell Park. This is Bidwell Park, specifically what's called Upper Park. This is where there's no pavement for the most part, and it's really awesome. And I have done so much riding up here. It's one of the great things about Chico is we have this park. There's tons of trails. They're legal. The trails are super gnarly. They're super hard to ride, which is great for testing. It's good for honing your skills. About this time of year, I'm just completely sick of them because I just want to ride something easy for once. But I'm enjoying my ride today. So it's just a good way to clear my head, solve a lot of problems. Also, I'm on a bike. I'm thinking about bikes. I think, what could I do with this bike, this part, this thing? I could change this a little bit. There's some improvement. So almost all of my designs have come from my brain while it's been on a bike in this park on top of rocks, because there are rocks everywhere here. Hey, thanks for that little going on that little tour with me. That was really fun, pretty nostalgic. We really appreciate you guys supporting us over these 30 years. Wouldn't be here without a bunch of bike dorks like you, me, and all the rest of us. And we got some big things going on in the future, including what's under here, which I think you'll be pretty excited about. So yeah, thanks again, and it's been a great ride, and we're gonna keep on trucking. Yeah, we adhere to that recycling gobbledygook. Can you hear it?
Yeah. Uh-oh.